So we've come to the point now where the decision in Libra, the balancing process in Libra, is about to give way to a fivefold subjective sequence where in the man finds his way deeper and deeper into his internal reality. It's the fivefold sequence at the end is the subjective correspondence to the outer externalization upon the path of outgoing. In other words, the subjective correspondence, the path of the goats, let's call it, and the outer externalization upon the path of outgoing, let's call this then the path of the sheep. And in Libra, we decide whether we will tread a path as a sheep or as a goat, eventually a unicorn. And this is carried forward on the path of ingoing or the path of return. It's very nice in a way when things are divided neatly with Libra in the actual centermost point. Makes it quite symmetrical. Then takes place the reversal of the wheel. This is a reorientation of energy currents within the human energy system. That's really what it is, microcosmically. Reorientation of energy currents within the human energy system. At least that's the macrocosmic interpretation of the reversal of the wheel. It's not that the great zodiacal wheel suddenly is turning in another direction, but the effect within man is reversed. So then takes place the reversal of the wheel and the beginning of the new orientation and of discipleship, true discipleship in Scorpio, with its very mental focus under Mercury and due to the cultivation of the mind in Scorpio. We're told in Scorpio that the mind functions in two senses, one to subdue the emotional nature and the other to bring illumination. So now the fivefold path of ingoing begins with Scorpio, leads then to the directed and controlled life of the disciple in Sagittarius. Interesting, this idea of control with Sagittarius. But if you think about what the archer must do in order to hit the mark, the archer must be very controlled. Yes, the archer must be very controlled and use ray 5 as is used in artillery. Okay. DK tells us that the fifth ray will be involved in artillery, and work with the bow and arrow is just simply an earlier expression of what artillery became. So directed, well aimed, steadfastly controlled. There are some stars in the constellation of Sagittarius that give this kind of steady stance and control. Then we have initiation in Capricorn, followed by service in Aquarius, and the work of the world savior in Pisces, and final liberation. There is the fixed cross is also called the cross of liberation, and this is associated with Aquarius. But DK uses the word, but final is something more. The final liberation is something more, and this we find actually in relation to Pisces. So this fivefold path of ingoing. Now it's not that because there is no Leo Virgo unity today that there is no path of ingoing. There is a path of ingoing involving the later signs in very much the same way. But there are only 5 there, and 6 in the path of outgoing now, because Leo and Virgo are divided. So I think all of us can recognize that we are in that stage of ingoing. Whatever signs may be in our horoscope, the wheel has been somewhat reversed, and the currents are being reversed in the body, and they're not simply expressing through the lower chakras, but the energy of the lower chakras are being raised into the higher for a higher form of expression, a kind of sublimation. I think we can all recognize that. Now, when we are on the path of ingoing, incoming, and we have strong accentuation from the Scorpio through Pisces area, then we have a real reinforcement. Otherwise, we may be working somewhat against the stream. We can be on the path of ingoing and yet have signs which incline us towards outgoing. That's kind of a rending process. But in a way, the whole hierarchy is in that position at the moment. They are ingoing towards Shambhala, and yet they are externalizing for the sake of the planet and for the sake of humanity, attempting to appear on the human stage, and this is a very great sacrifice for them. So there is a rending process involved, and maybe we as disciples in the world have something similar going on, because we are moving towards hierarchy. That's the path of ingoing, toward the soul, and yet we also are facilitating or helping to cooperate in this externalization of the hierarchy. And so we are rent, we are divided. The need to externalize and internalize simultaneously. So let us continue here. In this world period, we have the division of the sign of the Sphinx into 2 signs. Now, what is a world period? It's one of those maddeningly ambiguous terms, as is the term eon or aeon. Now, is he saying that the zodiac was divided into 11 sections in the previous solar system? Is the world period as big as the duration of a solar system? I don't think so. There is the impression, I have the impression, that some of these zodiacal divisions that we're talking about, into 8, let us say, occurred before individualization in this solar system. So perhaps a world period is of lesser duration than an entire solar system. Is it the incarnation of a planet within a solar system? Well, some of these planets last for the entire solar system, even though Earth may not. It probably lasts for most of it. I think that's also too long a period. I suspect that world periods can be understood in terms of great rounds. In the Secret Doctrine, we have some figure in excess of 300 million years for a chain round. But then if these divisions of the zodiac had to do with man, then 300 million years is also too long. And so would be a scheme round, which is even longer. So perhaps world periods have to do with a certain number of great Platonic years, each one of which is 25,000 years plus long. I think there's no way we can determine this exactly. But if we can determine that some of these zodiacal divisions occurred in relation to modern man, then we know that a world period cannot really be longer than the duration of the emergence of man upon this planet. Well, these are just some preliminary thoughts. One could pursue them with greater care, and one has to compare many references to see whether the different divisions of the zodiac into 8, into 10, into 11 occurred in relation to the evolution of man now. In that case, we would have some limits on what a world period might be, because in this particular world period we don't have 11, we have 12. And if the earlier world period of 11, let us say, can be shown to be related to the ascent of modern man, the ascent of man over a period of some 21 million years, then we know that a world period cannot be longer than that 21 million years. In fact, it would have to be much shorter. So, at least we have some hints here. In this world period, we have the division of the sign of the Sphinx into two signs, the Lion and the Virgin, soul and form, because the state of human evolution and conscious realization is that of a recognized duality. So, what's implied here is that man has moved into realizing himself as dual. Man has moved into realizing himself as dual. It was not always so in the development of man since individualization. So the world period must be, in this context, at least less than 21 million years. It is only at what is called the final judgment that another fusion will take place, and Virgo Libra will form one sign. For then man's sense of antagonistic dualism will be ended, and the scales will have been turned finally in favor of that which the Virgin Mother has hidden from expression for eons. Now, will this be at the Judgment Day? Will this be at the Judgment Day, some millions of years ahead, in the fifth round of some type? Again, obviously, we're dealing with these changes that occur in our signs, if not in the constellations. And these changes take place over certain millions of years, but not over billions and trillions of years, which would make a world period related to the appearance and disappearance of a planet or the appearance and disappearance of a solar system. No, they are occurring within our planetary life, apparently. And we'd be wiser, I think, to measure in terms of millions than in terms of billions and trillions. See, when we're talking about the manifestation of a solar logos, according to the ancient chronology, we're in trillions of years, 311 trillion, 40 billion years, and an interlude between our solar system and the previous. And that interlude has to last, according to the normal way of measuring these things, one occult century, or that long as the manifestation period has lasted. So at the Judgment Day, he says the final judgment. So you have to wonder whether in terms of our planet the final judgment is the Judgment Day, at which time 2/5 of human beings will be removed from our planet for inner spaces, destined for inner spaces, and eventually, I think, toward Mars, and 3/5 will remain. Is that the final judgment? Because if it is some millions of years ahead. In this world period, we have the Sphinx into two signs. And he seems to imply that in another world period, Virgo Libra will be merged. It seems like Virgo, a major sign of the previous solar system, is the pivot point. So let's ask, or think, or state it. Is Virgo the pivot here? Because first it's merged with Leo, and then it's merged with Libra in another world period. Now maybe he's going to say more about this final judgment here, and this will bring some clarification. The final judgment, as far as this planetary cycle is concerned, will take place in the next great world cycle. So this planetary cycle might be the appearance of our planet in this solar system. See, we have two things going on here with vague terminology. We have the planetary cycle, and we have the world cycle, but not only the world cycle, we have the next great world cycle. So there may be other world cycles which are not great. Obviously, he is carefully concealing this science of cycles. It will take place in the next great world cycle. Now, a world cycle might be simply a round. A great world cycle might be a scheme round. So let's ask the question. Is a world cycle simply a chain round, and is a great world cycle a scheme round, in which chains take the place of globes? In other words, what a what a globe is to a chain round, a chain is to a scheme round. That's the analogy. So the final judgment, as far as this planetary cycle is concerned, and perhaps what we mean here is just the appearance of our planet in the solar system, will take place in the next great world cycle. And by that time, 2/3 of the human race will have unfolded the Christ principle in one or other of the various stages of unfoldment, and be upon one of the final stages of the path of evolution. Now, the word the figure, the ratio 2/3, is slightly larger than 3/5. 2/3 is 66 2/3, and 3/5 is 60%. So 66 2/3% versus 60%. It's pretty close. Is he talking about the same judgment day? He's saying that only those will remain on the earth who are actually on the path. If they're on the path, will they have unfolded the Christ principle in one or other of its various stages? I think we can say yes, because at least they are aspiring. At least they are aspirants, and therefore the soul is awakening within them. There are many earlier stages of the path of evolution, but even aspirantship is part of the final stages of the path of evolution, because when you really look at it, from the time you're an aspirant to a full master, it's tiny compared to the immense duration of pursuing the normal path of evolution. So this is, I think he does seem to be speaking of the Last Judgment. Okay, or, well, Last Judgment? Judgment Day. Let's call it Judgment Day. The Judgment Day, most probably. They will be either probationary or accepted disciples or upon the path of initiation. And he does divide this in a treatise on cosmic fire. Very interestingly, he talks about the 3/5 who remain, and he divides them into 5 groups, some of which are Chohans, and the earliest of which are simply probationary disciples or aspirants. Eventually, in some mysterious way, Obviously, we're not going to penetrate that at this time. There will be only 10 signs of the zodiac again, and Aries and Pisces will form one sign. It will be opposite Virgo, Libra. So very symmetrical, because we couldn't have Leo, Virgo as opposite Aries, Pisces. It's not symmetrical. So again, the 12 become the 10. For the end is as the beginning. And this, you kind of wonder whether at some earlier time, were there 10 signs of the zodiac. I think in other places it talks about that. This dual and blended sign is called in some of the ancient books, in which all of this was foreseen, even though it's long ahead, at the end of a great world period. I'm beginning to suspect the Judgment Day occurring in the greater fifth scheme round of our supposedly 7-rounded Earth, although Venus completed in 5 scheme rounds, and there is the sense that the Earth should be doing the same but hasn't. Will it catch up? This dual and blended sign is called in some of the ancient books the sign of the fish with the head of the ram. Interestingly, there is a Capricorn with the sign of the goat with the tail of the fish. And we shall then have Aries, Pisces, Virgo, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Cancer, Capricorn, Leo, Aquarius. The end is as the beginning. Well, the fusion of Pisces into Aries unites end and beginning. And in an interesting way, the fusion of Virgo into Libra is the, let's call it, the end of the first hemicycle of zodiacal progress, and the beginning of the second hemicycle. For Virgo is the end of the first hemicycle, and Libra is the beginning of the second hemicycle. So there too, the end is as the beginning. These are very mysterious things we're being told here, and we can, make a little stab at interpreting some of it. I guess, it's important to understand when that last judgment is occurring. If at the end merely of the 5th round, which concerns our chain, it's quite imminent in terms of millions of years, I guess. I guess we're more than halfway through our present round. Well, some maybe 300 million years ahead. Or maybe if we have to pause between new rounds, it will be as much as 600 million. But if we have to deal with scheme rounds, then we're talking about a much longer process for this last judgment. The thing is, I think we may be talking about those who are on this particular planet and not on this particular chain and not some other chain. If it's some other chain, it will involve probably the 5th chain rather than the 4th. And that may be far ahead in terms of our planetary history. We're only really halfway through our planetary history, and some trillions of years supposedly have occurred according to the ancient Hindu chronology. Obviously, these figures dwarf the figures which are presently found acceptable by science, so the necessity to reconcile what occultism states and what science posits stands before us, and it's not going to be easy, this reconciliation, nor will it, I think, come immediately. For the moment, our occult figures will be viewed as folly by the serious thinking scientists who have the kind of evidence with which they work and do not proceed according to the premises which we under which we are working. So it's kind of interesting, this discussion of the interlude and what really is centermost. We're looking at this under the Libra chapter. There is a kind of fusion. Now, we have 12 is a Davic number, and 10 is a more human number. 12 is a number associated with the heart, and 1 is a number associated with 10 is a number associated with the will. We do have a second-ray soul on our planet, and a first-ray monad. It's almost as if we are moving forward into the time when the next solar system on the first ray will manifest, and perhaps our responsiveness to the 12-fold constellational zodiac will be tenfold. I don't think that it's the constellations per se that are merging, but rather the signs which respond to these constellational energies. So the 12-foldness of the zodiacal constellations will reach us in a tenfold manner. Here he very specifically uses the word signs. There will be 10 signs. He doesn't say 10 constellations. For the end will be as the beginning. And here is this merging of dogs in the background, sorry, of Virgo and Libra, because the dualism will be overcome, will be ended, and the scales will be turned in favor of that which the Virgin Mother has hidden. So it's almost as if Libra is merging into Virgo. The split between the opposites will no longer exist, and the soul will be seen as containing the personality. Really, the personality is an expression of the soul. They are essentially one thing, though experienced as opposites. Actually, it's all one thing, and even spirit and matter are one thing, however much human perception conceives them as opposites. So these are deep matters. Fire and water will then be blended. That's Aries, Pisces. Earth and air will be blended. Veiling the past which is gone instead of the future, as is now the case. So we will have transcended involvement with our past, and the past will be seen as having operated under a great illusion, which was sponsored by dualism. Fire and water will then, is this the conclusion of our whole planetary process, or is this simply occurring at the judgment? It will take place in the next great world cycle, and there will be a Virgo Libra union. Now, eventually, yes, this is even later than the Judgment Day. That's what's happening here. Even later than the Judgment Day, in some mysterious way, there will be only 10 signs. So we will again have 11 signs. There was once 11. We had a Leo-Virgo union with Libra as the middle point. Now we will have a Virgo Libra union. There will again be 10 signs, but eventually, 11 signs, but eventually there will be 12. No, not 12, but 10. Aries Pisces will also form one sign, and Libra Virgo will form another. So we are moving then from a previous situation of 11 to our present 12, again to 11, and thence to 10. And as I recall, in previous days, there was also an earlier 10, but there was certainly an earlier 8. We'll have to put together these various sign configurations which tell us how we have been responding to the 12-fold constellational energy. So here we are again, the sign of the fish with the head of the ram, 10 signs, fire and water will then blend, and the illusory duality in which we have lived will no longer obtrude into consciousness. In other words, we will no longer be aware of illusory dualism. It will all be seen and understood as a unity. Earth and air will then fuse, and in this way the old prophecy repeated in the Bible, that there shall be no more sea, will prove correct. Air, heaven, will then have come down to earth, and fusion will be established. A kind of a seventh point will be removed. There will be 6. Okay. Now, this is enigmatic. There should be no more sea, but what can that mean? Well, in a way, the Buddhic plane is meant, the love of the Buddhic plane is meant to entirely overcome the water of the astral plane. And the air represents the Buddhic plane, or heaven, and it will entirely infuse the watery realm. From another point of view, Earth may be considered the density of the dense physical body of the planetary logos. And the cosmic ethers will have descended, and that particular density will be sublimated. What will be the condition then of Earth, certainly of the densest systemic physical plane, that may be altogether etherealized into ether, with ether representing air as well in a systemic sense. So maybe air will have descended and etherealized the densest materiality into that type of physicality which is called airy, which is etheric. That's one possibility. The other possibility has to do with what may become of the dense physical body of the planetary logos altogether. Will it have been elevated entirely into the cosmic ethers, and when the Earth appears again in the next solar system, will its lowest expression be cosmic etheric rather than emotional, mental, so forth? In other words, the lower 18 subplanes, even the lower 21 subplanes, may no longer be part of the manifestation of Earth in the next solar system. That's a bit of a speculation, more than a bit of a speculation. But the third interpretation is the first one that I mentioned, and that has to do with the idea that watery desire nature is completely taken over by love, which is the quality of the Buddhic plane, which is the plane of air. So these are some attempts then to interpret the idea that there shall be no more sea. And the fusion of Earth, Virgo, and air, Libra, is symbolically to represent this idea. Anyway, that powerful first ray number 10 will be operative at the eventually, even after the Judgment Day, eventually. So we're probably looking at the conclusion of our planetary manifestation, at which time preparation for the Earth's appearance in the next solar system, and it must appear because it has not completed all of its cosmic initiations, at that time there may be a hint of what is to come by reversion from the number 12, which suggests response to the soul nature of our planetary logos, to the number 10, which suggests response to the monadic, first-ray monadic nature of our planetary logos. That will be, I think, the way the Earth is, a full base of the spine center, monadically responsive to our to the monad of our planetary logos. A full base of the spine center in which the planet is essentially a first-ray planet in a solar system of a second-ray logos who is operating through a first-ray personality, a red solar system to come. Well, all of these are in the realm of prophecy, and we have so very much to pass through before any of this is really relevant to processes on our planet. So, we can speculate. Of course, the interesting thing is Libra has a lot of the third ray, and as I said, there are many theoreticians found in Libra, and mathematicians and economists who are dealing with mathematics and so forth. We are speculating here, I suppose, using the reasoning process and the third ray to do so. In the cosmic sense, then, and not in the individual sense, the unfoldment of the cosmic Christ will be manifested, for which the whole creation waits. Now, the cosmic Christ. Well, let's read this through. Thus will come the consummation of desire, even as Libra can indicate that in a lower sense. Thus will come the consummation of desire as a result of dedicated aspiration. Then and only then will the desire of all nations come, and he for whom all men wait will appear. But this is more than the reappearance of the Christ. This is more like the reappearance of our planetary logos through all the different levels of his vehicles. It's as if Sanat Kumara can then walk the earth and be recognized by all, through the systemic ethers at least. He is a representative of the planetary logos and is an emanation thereof, I suspect, the planetary logos in incarnation, a ray of the planetary logos, and therefore essentially the planetary logos himself. So these are great eventualities. What is this cosmic Christ? Is this cosmic Christ the love nature, the soul nature of our solar logos working through the second ray soul of our planetary logos? The whole creation, is this creation the solar logoic creation? Or is it the creation of our planetary logos? Certainly our planetary logos is waiting for the coming of the Christ principle because it has a second ray soul. When the second ray soul of our solar logos can work fully through the second ray soul of our planetary logos, then this sort of love consummation will occur. Libra, interestingly, is not just a third ray sign. It has so much to do with divine love and understanding. It has a strong second ray component, very strong. And when we're talking about consummation, whether in this great cosmic sense or in terms of marriage or in terms of the male-female sexual relation, Libra is involved. It's consummatory. The opposites are fused in union, and the bliss of Shambhala, with which Libra is associated, is in some small sense revealed. Thus will come the consummation of desire as a result of dedicated aspiration, the aspiration which rises along the central channel connecting the base to the crown. Then and only then will the desire of all nations, it seems that we are speaking here of the earth, come, and he for whom all men wait will appear. But we are talking cosmically here. And if we're speaking cosmically, we have to speak of cosmic beings, and our planetary logos is not just a systemic being, it is a cosmic being. And the desire of all nations, I suppose, is the great king of Shambhala, for whom the Christ stands as a lesser desire of all nations. At least that's how I'm interpreting that. So, offering some ideas here in these rather abstract and distant matters. eventual matters. We're dealing with history, we're dealing with the future. The history of desire. Interesting. Because the balancing of desire occurs in Libra. Balancing of desire for that which Virgo represents and later that which Scorpio represents occurs in Libra. So here we are given an amazingly large thought. The history of desire is to be found in the signs of Taurus, Libra, Scorpio, and Pisces. Venus rulerships at first, then a Mars rulership, and finally some sort of Jupiterian, I guess, rulership, or maybe Neptunian rulership as a higher octave. Who would think of such a thing as the history of desire? I suppose it has to do with our local cosmos. Desire is actually a universal principle and has to do with great beings and galaxies and even greater beings far beyond our own local cosmos. But it's the history of desire, I suppose, in relation to our planet and maybe in relation to our solar system and our local cosmos, perhaps. So, Taurus, Libra, Scorpio, and Pisces. Taurus is the bull of desire. Material desire rules. So this is life, and I guess we can look at this as considered as vitality expressed in the fulfillment of lower desire. Taurus, the bull of desire, rushing blindly. The third eye has not opened. The sacral center is prominent. The solar plexus is prominent. Material desire rules. The early Taurian ages in which man is an instinctual being, Taurus having so much to do with instinctuality. This is instinctual desire. Libra, the balancing of desire. The opposite objective to desire is the scales or balances. It's kind of contrasting Mars. Whoops, let's see how we can do that. Mars with Venus. It's interesting that Mars is in detriment in Taurus and yet has so much to do with desire. That struggle be undismayed. There's a constant questing after that which is instinctually wanted when Mars is related to Taurus, even though it's considered to be in detriment. So the opposite objective to desire, which is a kind of an imbalance, is the scales or balances. What we have here is a more poised position, which does not rush out towards some object meant to be acquired, although in early Libra we have what's called unbalanced fiery passion. So the early Libra experience is as much subject to desire as is the Taurus experience. It's human love, found on page 333, I think, unbalanced fiery passion. But eventually, the extremes of desire are brought under control, and there's not so much an outrushing towards materiality, but it is balanced by desire or aspiration for something higher. So what's really being balanced? Desire and aspiration are being balanced here. Scorpio, notice we don't get rid of desire, do we? The balancing of the victory of spiritual desire. Okay. This whole story involves desire. So there is high desire and low desire, and aspiration leads towards the summoning or evocation of spiritual desire. One begins to identify with soul impulses and then has for his desires that which the soul desires. Desire is such a universal principle, we cannot say it simply ends with the eradication of personality desire. There we can say that as long as there is any form of separation in cosmos, as long as a complete and final synthesis does not prevail in a manifested way, there will be desire. When God is all in all, or the universal logos has re-become entirely itself, and his purpose and task are completed, there will be no desire. But what is it that causes the issuing forth from the absolute of the one ray, which becomes the universe, each successive universe? Is that desire? Is that will? What is it? These are mysteries, I suspect, well beyond the ken of man. We can offer speculations which stimulate our abstract thought, which eventually, with the stronger power to think abstractly, realization can come. But I don't think the realizations of the truth of these matters. Anyway, Scorpio, the victory of spiritual desire. So we had earthly desire. We balanced our desires in Libra. We reoriented our desires via aspiration. A lot of aspiration is also found in Taurus. Interestingly, the highest form of aspirational idealism is found in Taurus. That's an amazing idea. The victory of spiritual desire over common desire and over halfwayness that we may find in Libra. The soul is triumphant and quality emerges. In other words, the energy of the soul is quality. Energy of the soul is quality. And that emerges over desire of the lower kind. The quality of the soul is now infusing and manifesting through the personality, and spiritual desire dominates. In one way, spiritual desire can be called aspiration. Let us call this aspiration. As aspiration. But the soul also has its own desires to tame and redeem its projection, personality, and so these spiritual desires are in part fulfilled here. The soul is triumphant. The soul in incarnation is triumphant, and this leads eventually to the triumph of the solar angel at the fourth initiation. And finally, Pisces, the consummation of divine desire, the desire of all nations, leading eventually to the cosmic Christ. Now, Aries has been associated with the cosmic Christ, and Virgo with the individual Christ. Here, Pisces is connected with that consummation we call the cosmic Christ. Interesting, Venus is a planet of consummation. There is the consummation in Libra, but also and certain, instinctual consummations in Scorpio, in Taurus. The consummation of interplay, perhaps in Gemini, but the final consummation being the exalted position of Venus, occurs in Pisces. From whence divine desire? Well, it's the desire of the soul for liberation and for participation in a higher love nature. The desire of all nations is not the individual Christ, he is the reflection of the cosmic Christ. Eventually the cosmic Christ will pervade our planet, using its second-ray soul, and through which the second-ray soul of the solar logos can express itself. We have life, quality, and appearance here, life, though they are reversed in a way. Balance is thrown in, but then quality and appearance. There's the Trinity, life, quality, and appearance. But the appearance seems to be on the higher planes, and the life on the lower planes. So the cosmic Christ, a great entity, shall we call it the soul nature of our solar logos? Shall we call it the soul nature of our local cosmic logos? Shall we call it perhaps the soul nature of the one about whom naught may be said? However to understand that. Cosmic Christ is a protean term. Sometimes Sirius is associated with the cosmic Christ. So there are a number of different levels at which this cosmic Christ consciousness can be thought reasonably to manifest. But I think we can begin with our soul nature of our solar logos and then move on to Sirius, maybe move on to Orion. Great exemplars of the Christ. Now the cosmic Christ itself, in the universal sense, is one of the three aspects of the universal Trinity. We can't know what that is. It's the Christ nature of the entire universe. I don't think we're talking about that, but some ability to appreciate the ascending Christ natures comes in Pisces. Divine is a word that has to do with the monad. The Father's home is Piscean. The monad lives in the Father's home. Are we talking about divine desire as the, is this the divine desire of the monad, finally reaching consummation when it returns to itself? The monad is a great center of will, but also of love, because it's on the second subplane of the cosmic physical plane. So the monad re-becomes itself, as it were, ingathering all of its extensions, ingathering the pilgrim, the jiva, which has gone forth over the many millions of years, and reaching at a certain point a kind of consummation in Pisces. I leave the Father's home, and turning back I save, and then eventually reach the Father's home for consummation. Interestingly, though, the word appearance is used, which usually has to do with the lower subplanes, which has to do with materialization. But finally, I think it is the appearance of monadic nature throughout the lower planes, when there has been the full consummation of that which the monad intended. So these are interesting and mysterious statements. There is the consummation of the soul reached in Pisces. And the fourth initiation has much to do with the kind of release which occurs when the causal body is destroyed or dissolved, etc. But a still higher consummation may wait, and that may be monadic in nature. The clue here is the word divine rather than spiritual. Spiritual desire is of the soul, divine desire is of the monad. And we see the intimate relation of the monad to the sign Pisces, and to Virgo, of course. But I leave the Father's home, and turning back I save, and then re-arrive. I leave the Father's home, that is the monadic plane. I leave because of a certain type of will and desire, and this is consummated when my pilgrimage is concluded, at least this phase of my monadic pilgrimage. I'm outward bound on the way of higher evolution later, and so are we all. But at least this phase of the pilgrimage is consummated, and I would say that's the end. And the end is the beginning. You know, a new beginning occurs on the way of higher evolution when the great decision is made. And so in a way, Pisces and Aries are united. The end is the beginning. The end of my pilgrimage here in the 5 worlds of lower evolution, or 5 worlds of superhuman and superhuman evolution, is followed by a going forth on the way of higher evolution. And this is an Aretian beginning and an outward boundness of Sagittarius as well. So we go forth, we begin something new. There we have Aries, interestingly, and Aries too is associated with the cosmic Christ. So let us say that both Pisces and Aries are associated with the cosmic Christ, which is a higher form of Christ's nature than can be appreciated immediately on our planet, or at least we're not talking about the expression of our planetary soul. It's got to be something more. It's got to be solar. It's got to be Syrian. It's got to perhaps relate to the one about whom naught may be said. We can't go beyond that. That's as cosmic as we can get. Okay, then there's a through and throughness, an appearance of the highest divine aspect in the lower. So this is the end of Esoteric Astrology 80, Factor Division E. And where are we with this? We're on page 232. Okay. And we will see whether we begin with 80, F, or 81. We will see. Meanwhile, we have reached the end of this particular program, and we are on the mark. It's been a 5-hour program so far. We're on the mark, and we will decide what kind of time remains to continue. Some very abstract and interesting futuristic considerations have come here, very cosmic considerations. It's as if in Libra you just pause and you try to look at the wholeness of things and see whither the various paths can lead and make a decision about whether to choose a path to the whole or a path which identifies us with the part and goes backwards, as it were. Okay, friends, for the moment then, and we will see where we progress to. Our next discussion will be further statements on the experience of Libra, which he says are so mysterious in a way and so difficult to describe because they are unremarkable, except in the case of the highly advanced person. And here he's been talking about such a person, and I think we can see there's a lot of remarkable possibilities connected with Libra, including the direct path to Shambhala. Okay, then we will sign off for the moment.